Hello and welcome to another episode of Right Now. My name is Zachary Steele and I am the founder and executive director of Broadleaf Writers in Atlanta, Georgia. Despite the ongoing stay-at-home life we're all living, we're trying to keep some programming going for you to offer some distraction as well as some useful insight on the craft of writing and the publishing industry. After all, we want your work to be published and there's no better time to write than right now. On today's program, we'll be chatting with literary agent Kenzi Nevins of the Cyle Young Literary Elite. Welcome, Kenzi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Still, stuck at home, but
Living the life in the home office.
yep.
What is it like for you right now as an agent? Has your operation, is it kind of going the same way only at home, or are you having to adjust to new ways of doing things?
It's going very similarly. I always did my agent work from home. I have other positions that I fulfill outside the house usually, but my agent work was always from home. So that's pretty much the same. Things have definitely slowed down in publishing, but still moving forward at the moment.
Are you having, with any clients or any other agents who have clients, are you hearing of delays in publication? Are things for the summer still planning on going forward for now?
Yeah, I think most publishing houses are pushing things until after the summer. At least all the publishers I've talked to recently have said they don't want to set any dates during the summer. Everything is fall or later. A lot of people are feeling like it's safer to just have most things come out in 2021, I think, at this point. But I think there will still be some books released in the fall, but most things are being pushed past the summer.
And this has to be having a pretty big effect just on the industry in general and the way operations are going. Do you see any things that have come out of this that the industry might end up adopting?
I'm not sure. I think virtual meetings has definitely become a big thing. And I think for a lot of industry professionals, that's going to continue to be a thing. I think in all industries, people are just realizing how much more able we are to work at home than we thought we were. So I think that's true with the publishing houses, especially in New York, as much as it is anywhere else. I think a lot of people will end up adopting that. Other than that, I don't think a lot of things have changed super much. Besides, jobs and positions are switching around a lot with layoffs and that sort of thing. So there's been a lot of change in that area.
It does feel like there's going to be a larger number of people working from home and doing
I think that's true, yeah.
remotely. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so aside from just talking about coronavirus and how life has changed, which is such a fun topic.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
We've had a number of questions submitted from our writing community, from members of the organization, and we're going to run through a few of them, if that's cool with you.
Great, no problem.
Because I'm sure you've encountered that writers always have questions for agents.
Oh, yes.
One of the first ones that comes to mind is, I know it's kind of a silly question, but it's also one that, maybe we don't think of that's important. If you're at a conference or a workshop or somewhere just meeting a writer in a one-on-one capacity, is it okay for them to sit down and just say, "Hi, Kenzi," or would you prefer something a little more professional?
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. In emails, I usually like when people say Miss Nevins or something like that, because I feel like I don't know you. But face to face, I totally don't mind if people call me by my first name. In fact, I actually pretty much prefer it generally. Anything else feels a little bit strange to me just because I'm not used to it.
Yeah, I would imagine so. The next one that came up is one I definitely hear a lot, and it has to do with comp titles. I think
yeah,
people tend to get very confused and also a little bit intimidated by the idea.
Yeah.
And this is it's all subjective. This is a personal preference thing. For you, do you want in a query the writer to do comp titles to their work?
So it's not as important in a query as it is in like a book proposal, which is the bigger document that I would send to a publisher. At that point, it becomes really important, and we usually I help them look for like 3 or 4 comp titles. If you have 1 or 2 books that you feel like are really similar to yours, that is helpful to put in a query because it helps me place it a little bit as far as like the genre and feeling of it. So a lot of times people will say something like, it's like this meets this. So like I'm selling a book right now that I would say is Percy Jackson meets the Penderwicks. It's a middle grade novel. And that to me is really helpful because it gives me an idea of sort of the flavor of your book. So you have something like that, that's helpful to include, but I don't need like a huge list of comp titles in the query.
What if a writer were to just say, these are the writers who have influenced my work? Is that as useful to you, or do you prefer the comp title?
That can be useful too, as long as it's a writer whose works I would know. You know, sometimes people just list a lot of authors who I may not have heard of, or I may not be totally sure what they write. And so that's not super useful to me. Just the way the world of books works, a lot of times I'm more likely to know the title than I am the author. So I would say that's usually more helpful, but either way is fine.
Okay. And we're going to kind of stick in the same area and go to query letters, which in and of itself can be, I would like to say probably a multiple day conversation, because query letters, there's a lot to talk about. And as far as things that intimidate writers, I think this may be right up there with sitting down to talk to an agent as so what are the most common mistakes that you see in a query letter?
So I would say the number one mistake for me personally is trying to be too creative. You'll hear a lot of advice on needing to make your query letter stand out. And I personally, and I know this is true for a lot of other agents I've talked to, both at my same agency and otherwise, the story itself is what should grab me. And your writing style. The query letter doesn't have to be overly creative. And in fact, if it is, I'll probably get distracted and confused. If I get into the first paragraph and I don't understand what you're talking about, I pretty much throw it out right then. So what I really just need to know is all the pertinent information. What is the story about? Who are you? Why are you writing this? And that's pretty much what I need to know right off the bat. And so if you're throwing a whole bunch of other stuff in at the beginning, I'll just get confused and lost. So I would say that's probably my number one. Number 2 is any kind of weird statements about how many copies you're going to sell or how wildly popular this book is going to be. People do that a lot. It's impossible for you to tell that. That has a lot. It has to do with a lot more than just your writing or how good you are. It has a lot to do with the market and a whole bunch of other things. So don't tell me the book's going to sell like 10 million copies or something. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
So I would say those are probably my top 2.
You had mentioned standing out in a query letter. Do you have any kind of examples of what might make a writer stand out?
That's a good question. Actually, I would say being short and to the point makes a writer stand out. I get a lot of query letters that are just like unbelievably long, like paragraphs and paragraphs. And that's just really hard to get through. And it's also really hard for me to get the information that I actually need to know, like what genre is this book? Is it sellable? That sort of thing. A really good summary is, I would say, the most important thing. So if you've never had anybody look at your elevator pitch or your blurb or anything, I would definitely have lots of eyes on that before you query it. That's definitely the most important part to me. In all the books that I've asked for to see the full manuscript, it's always because their summary, their few sentence summary just really captured me. Somehow the flavor of it just really caught me. And so I would say that's the part that's the most important to me, definitely.
Okay. Now this is going to apply to either query letters or meeting face to face. Well, we'll say meeting for a pitch session, because sometimes as we're about to say, this is not a face-to-face thing. Have you had any moments that kind of left you speechless? And I'm gonna cite a couple of examples, and they were both with pitches, not with query letters. One agent told me that she had somebody pitch her while she was in the bathroom stall. Yeah. And then a recent one of these, we had an agent say that somebody sat down and began their pitch with something to the effect of, you'll never be able to get away with murder the way I can. And then go through a whole list of ways that it was supposed to apply to her book. Her character was actually murdering somebody. But have you had any of those kind of moments?
Wow, I don't think I've ever had anything quite that shocking, thankfully. But I did once have someone sit down with me and begin their conversation by explaining to me how the Black Plague was going to wipe out most of America. Because she'd heard it on like a reality TV show or something. So that was a very interesting conversation, especially with what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah,
prior to this.
Kind of have to wonder if she's
yeah. People trying to pitch you in weird places is a thing. Like I have had people come up to me like while I'm putting food on my plate, or like while I'm trying to go to the restroom, you know, while I'm walking away from the building, all of those things. And all of those are very weird experiences.
Yeah, I'm often really bewildered by the number of stories I hear about writers who are treating pitches like pickup lines. You know, basically, yes. I'm going to catch you at this bar, or I'm going to catch you getting food or something. We're just going to have this sort of, you want to have me sort of conversation. It's very bizarre.
Yes, it is. It's very weird.
Leaving query letters.
Yes.
There's this thing that I've been kind of asking everybody, both writer and agent, and it's sort of an exploration of my own writing as well. And I'm curious what your take is on it. What would you prefer to work with? Somebody who is a very skilled writer in the mechanics of writing, or somebody who is a gifted storyteller?
That's a really good question. For me personally, they really go hand in hand. And actually in our agency group chat, we were just talking about this morning. If you have a great story, an amazing story and an amazing plot, but it isn't told well, the mechanics of your writing isn't great, I'm still going to turn it away for that. So I would say I would be more likely to take a story that's written really well, even if the plot isn't quite as like absolutely amazing, as I would to take a really, really good story that's not written well, because it just won't sell. The mechanics of the writing are so important.
It's an interesting question, because I do get quite a number of different answers to it. And yeah. It's a personal preference thing, but it's really interesting to see. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, writers work a long time to try to get an agent, and oftentimes with say a debut work, they've probably edited it, well, they should have probably edited it many, right. But once they've signed with you, and before you start selling it to editors, what would you say the average number of rounds of edit you might go through? And then this is going to vary wildly, but I'm just looking for a sort of median here.
Right. It does vary wildly. So as a personal rule, I don't do huge edits with any of my clients' work. I don't believe that that's the agent's job. Some agents choose to do more edits than others. Most of those that I know don't do a ton of edits. A lot of times once you get with a publishing house, the editor at that publishing house will then give rounds of edits. That's very common. Usually I will only do one or two, if any. It's generally either really big picture things like shifting a certain part of the plot, or very small things. For instance, I recently signed an author who is from the UK. And so her whole manuscript had all the British spellings in it. So we had to go through the whole manuscript and change all the spellings to the American spellings, since I'll be pitching mostly American publishing houses. So that's generally the kind of edits that I do, or like manuscript format edits, like we need to put this all in Times New Roman size 12, double spaced, 1-inch margins, that sort of thing. I don't do any kind of huge content edits. If the book needs that, I'll usually tell the author to have someone else edit it and then resubmit it.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, when you're signing somebody, you're wanting a manuscript that's basically, let's say, 85% ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk word count. Now,
Yeah.
I know this differs from genre to genre, but do you want your writers to have a sort of standardized range of word count per genre, or do you kind of just let the story be what it is?
There's definitely a range for genres. And the only reason for that, I think it's okay if an author is outside of that on either end, but there are some publishing houses and editors who are very strict about, like, a romance can't be more than 50,000 words, that sort of thing. And so we do have to like try and keep some sort of tabs on that. So there's a range, and usually it's a pretty large range for every genre. For instance, like middle grade usually sits around that like 50,000 word range, whereas for YA I would want to see more like 75 to 90,000, and with adult fantasy going higher than that, and obviously younger age books going shorter. So there is definitely a range that we try to stick to. I'm not super strict about it, but I do always have it in mind.
Okay. Kind of dancing through things here. First pages. Now, first I want to begin this by saying that you'll be joining us this year at the 5th Annual Broadleaf Writers Conference, which we're very excited about.
I'm really excited.
And we have at the like a lot of conferences, we have a first pages critique where attendees will submit their work, and we'll have our panel of agents, and you guys hear these things cold and are able to give your immediate reaction to that. If you were to sort of boil it down to like one bit of advice for writers on first pages, what would it be?
Everybody has so many different opinions about this. So the first thing I would always tell writers is don't take just one person's opinion. If you feel like it's the right thing for your book, but you've heard somebody say to never do that on a first page, definitely try it and see what people think. There's a chance that it won't work. But you never know until you try. And a lot of things, something will be right for your book that isn't correct for a lot of other books. For instance, I love being thrown straight into the action from the first page. That's something that I look for in all the books that I take on. I love that. Even if it's not like extreme action, like we're right in the middle of a battle, but like something's happening from the very beginning. That's what I like. Some agents really don't like that. Some like you to give them time to sort of get used to the characters in the world. So all agents will have different opinions on that. And that's something that's important to look at when you're trying to find agents to query and agents who would fit your work. But definitely it's always, I think, a good policy to try the thing that you think is going to work for your book, even if you've heard advice against it before.
In other words, don't always pin yourself into the box.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you as a literary agent for just a moment before I spring some lightning.
Yeah.
First and foremost, how long have you been an agent?
I've been an agent since July of 2018, so that'll be 2 years in July.
Okay, and was that something that you thought for a while you wanted to do, or did you just one day go, hey, this looks like a good opportunity?
It's something I'd wanted to do for a long time. It was something I first considered when I was in college as a job that I might enjoy, but I did end up sort of stumbling into it because of some connections I had with other people who work for this same agency who I'd known previously from conferences and in college and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So kind of both.
And yeah, I know obviously you're coming to my conference.
Yeah.
How often do you go to conferences?
So I'm trying to build it. Last year I went to 3. This year I am slated to go to 6. Most of them at this point have become online. So I
Yeah.
did one online in April. I'm doing another one online in a couple of weeks. And I think I have an online one in June. And then the other 3 are all in the fall. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers for that.
Well, so are we.
Yes, I know, because I'd love to actually be able to go and talk to real people. It's such a better experience, I think, personally. But yeah, so I'm just kind of trying to grow it a little bit each year. So
Okay. And so that everybody is aware, what kind of work do you represent? Obviously, a Google search and a look on the Cyle Young website will do this, but since we're here.
Yeah, since we're here. So I represent illustrators, which is a unique thing. Not all literary agencies represent illustrators. Cyle has started doing that. It's a new thing. So I represent all the illustrators who are represented by the agency. I also do picture books, even those without illustrations. And I do graphic novels, middle grade, and YA. Are like genres that I'm moving into. My picture book list is pretty full at the moment. So I'm really moving into middle grade and starting to look for submissions in that area.
Excellent. Do you remain flexible with that based on the industry needs, or is that just an area you prefer to work in?
Yeah, I'll read pretty much anything, but those are the areas that I know the most about. So they tend to be the ones that I stick in. There are very few things that I wouldn't consider. I don't do any kind of suspense or thriller or anything like that, because we have another agent at the agency who does that specifically. And I don't do a lot of romance or adult fiction just because I don't really know very much about it. So I mostly like to stay, like, I would say new adult and younger. But I will always look at pretty much anything.
Okay. Sounds like you as a reader would probably fall in that range too.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's probably best, and it seems like most agents are this way, to stick in the area of books that you know best.
Right. That's true. That's where you have the connections and that sort of thing.
Probably good advice for writers too.
Right.
All right. So we have worked through the members' questions, and we've
Awesome.
talked about coronavirus, and now I'm going to lay 12 lightning round questions on you.
Okay.
There are no right answers here. There are only the answers in your brain.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite book as a child?
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay. What is a character, or who is a character that you would pledge your undying love for?
The Black Prince in Inkheart.
Okay. Name a book that you think more people should be aware of.
The Raven Cycle. That's
Who is
4 books, so kind of cheating, but
who is that? Who is that by?
Maggie Stavater.
Oh, okay. All right. And then we're going to go a little bit in the Wayback Machine, and we're gonna ask this one: Edward, Jacob, or a sack of potatoes?
Sack of potatoes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. I often said I will take French fries over those 2 any day.
Yes, honestly.
So you are sitting on the stool. The Sorting Hat's about to fall on your head. What do you hope it says?
I hope Ravenclaw. I have recently found out that is not the case.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What, somebody else told you you're not Ravenclaw?
I took the official test and have found out I am unexpectedly a Slytherin.
Really? So you have a dark side.
And none of my friends were surprised. I'm still surprised, but none of my friends were, so I guess it must be.
I think, but you should tell them. I think we've all learned that the Sorting Hat will take your preferences into account.
That's
so
true.
If you want to be a Ravenclaw rather than a Slytherin, I think it's going to put you in Ravenclaw.
Hey, you know, it might.
Sticking with that universe, what spell or form of magic would you prefer to be able to use in real life?
That thing, apparating, where they can go to different places instantly, that's something I would love.
You'll be happy to know that the popular answers have been apparating or the invisibility cloak. One way or another, people either want to be able to get away fast or not be seen.
I think that's the truth.
Keeping to our introverted roots. All right, so a person that you would most like to be stranded on a desert island with.
Peter from Peter and the Starcatchers.
Okay. Which is a great series of books, by the way.
Amazing.
Yeah. All right. Throne of Glass, Harry Potter, or Hunger Games?
Harry Potter.
What is the one food you can't do without?
Potatoes.
And
of any kind.
There we go. We're back to the potatoes.
Yes.
And the one thing that most often spoils in your fridge?
In the fridge.
Mm.
Yogurt that is any other flavor besides plain. I don't know why we still buy it.
Roller coaster or carousel?
Carousel.
All right.
Terrified of roller coasters.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. My answer has changed over time, so I All right, so at the mercy of technology here, I had a power outage, and I don't know where we were at the answer. I only had one question left, and it was the first thing that you're going to do when whatever normal is, and we get back to it.
I'm going to travel somewhere. It has yet to be decided where, but we're making plans.
Excellent. I think that's a good one. That's actually, I was thinking about that yesterday, and somebody asked me, and I said, I want to go somewhere. And they were like, where would you like to go? I said, I don't know, just somewhere. Anywhere.
Just anywhere, literally anywhere. The next town, I don't care.
Yeah. All right. Well, apologies for the power outage, of which
no problem.
I have no control over. But I appreciate you giving some time for this. And
it was so fun.
Thank you answering our members' questions, and we are really looking forward to having you at the conference. We are absolutely certainly going to hold in person because things are going to be perfect.
Yes.
All right. Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day and stay safe.
You too.
All right. Thanks. For more information on the 5th Annual Broadleaf Writers Conference, please visit our website at broadleafwriters.com. Click on the 5th Annual Broadleaf Writers Conference tab, and there you'll find our list of speakers, some of the programming we're going to be doing. Our schedule will be available sometime before June 1st, and then we are opening registration on June 1st. And given everything we went through this year, have gone through this year, that we're definitely looking forward to getting together in October, and we hope that you can join us.